So I've given myself like an hour to film this, which was not that smart. But I was really determined to do it today because just to recap, yesterday, I filmed the first part of this video and I was thinking like, oh, I'll be able to achieve it all in one day. And then I was recording for like almost 2 hours, and the tier list that I was using, it just disappeared and it died. So we're here for part two. We're looking at all the books I read in 2024 from July to December, so the second half of the year. And we're just going through and, ranking them as one does. We'll just do a quick recap and then I think we should really just get into it. Okay, let's go through the tier list again. The tiers that we have, at the bottom place, we have The Logs Are Damp. This is representative of one-star reads in which, oh, there's a metaphor of fire, by the way. To be honest, guys, you should have just watched the first one. Like, if you're here, like, go watch the first one and catch up and then come back to me. And I would love and appreciate you forever. But just in case you don't want to do that, like I guess, I'll go through the tiers for you. There's a metaphor of fire, just because that's what I wanted. Bottom place, for one-star equivalent, we have The Logs Are Damp. This is when you can't even start a fire because there's just no potential. Like, it's just, the fire is never gonna happen. Flame struggling for life at the end of a wick. 2 stars, you're losing me, like, you're trying so hard to like hold on for dear life, and there's still that little bit there that makes me like, okay, I guess, like, you were fine. But realistically, at the end of the day, like, you've kind of lost me, like, you're on your last legs, call it your deathbed. Then 3-star equivalent, we have, yeah, that's a fire. These are for the books where it's just like, I read it and I was like, well, that was definitely a book. Don't have much more to say than that, to be honest, We then have 4-star campfire. Someone's got a guitar. I'm sat on a couple twigs or maybe a log, but that's okay for the sake of the moment. And this is just when, like, have you ever been to a campfire and you're like, this is really nice, this is really fun, we've got all the people there, it's nice and warm, maybe you've got a blanket around you or you're wrapped up, but you're also kind of uncomfortable because you're sat on, like, a log, like, there's some downsides there. Like, it's still really great overall and you're like, you're really glad you had that experience, but, like, it wasn't the best experience of your life. We then have 4.5-star equivalent here. These are for the books where it's like, it's not quite 5-star because I just didn't really feel in my heart and soul that I could say that confidently. But it was so close. It's just like a step above all my 4 stars, but it's not quite 5-star. This tier is called POV, a fireplace, book in hand, hot chocolate, blanket over my lap, peace. And then ultimately, 5-star reads, we have Ablaze. This is when the fire is so strong, so potent, so overpowering, because the book is just that good. Need I say more? I don't think so. Let's continue where we left off. Also, I've made a couple of changes because I was kind of loosely ranking them within the tiers themselves. And then I was looking back over and I was like, what was me of 24 hours ago doing, to be honest? Some of the things I disagreed with just a little bit. So I've kind of rearranged it. But take the inter-tier rankings kind of loosely. I'm not as confident in that as, my actual proper, like, it was 5-star, it was 4-star. You know what I mean? Okay, let's continue. The first book, kind of like July time, was Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman. He was the one that wrote Coraline. And yeah, he did a little Norse mythology, like, retelling thing where he, like, retold different myths from Norse mythology. I've never actually really, like, read Norse mythology. Why can't I say that? Norse mythology. I think I keep going to say Norse mythology. This just happens to me sometimes. I have no, like, valid explanation for the way my mouth moves. But yeah, he retold Norse mythology. It's something that I've never really explored. I know quite a bit about Greek mythology, which I kind of talked about last time. But I didn't know anything about Norse mythology. And I found it really interesting. I really liked his writing style. It was quite like accessible. Like even though I didn't really know much apart from, like Thor and Loki and stuff, I went in not really knowing anything and didn't feel like penalized for that, you know what I mean? So it was just like a great introduction to Norse mythology. It was good fun, learning about a lot of the myths and stuff. And I enjoyed it. So I'll give it like a 4 stars, but because it's like it wasn't as thrilling as these other ones, so I'm gonna put it at the end. I then have What If Stars Don't Die by Ivy Oakes. This one, when I was like, I mentioned this in one of my other videos, but when I was like 13, 14, I signed up to a mailing list where they sent you like digital copies of books that you could opt in to download so that you could read them and then like review them to help bolster the book, and this was one of those. I ended up getting, because I ended up joining the author's mailing list herself, so I got quite a few books from her. I've only read 2. It's this one, and then there was like a prequel. And guys, it was not good. Mm-mm. I wonder if, did I leave a rating? I think I left a review of the, oh, maybe I didn't. I thought I left a review of one of them, but I didn't actually. But either way, ultimately these were like 2 stars. It was not, the series was just not it for me. It basically is about this guy, and like right off the bat, his parents die, and then he could go and live with his grandparents, but they're kind of like unfeeling, and he doesn't really get along with them massively. And so he phones up his aunt, who he didn't really have like a relationship with, but it's like his mum's sister. And he's like, hey, can I come live with you? And initially she's like, no, but then she drives down to see him for like the funeral and stuff anyway. And then it's like, do you know what? Yeah. So then he moves in with her to her hometown. And then he meets what is his aunt's niece, but only like not related to him. Like they're not cousins. Like it's a through marriage thing. It's like his aunt's husband's like brother or sister's daughter. You know what I mean? So that makes sense. So they're not related, but there is like a family relationship thing there. And they end up like kind of falling in love. But what really pissed me off, like the only thing that I really remember about this book is how he's supposed to come from like a low-key kind of rich family. And therefore they have like this proper way of speaking. And, he then moves into this town where they, I guess, have a bit more slang. But they were coming for him all the time over vocabulary that was not that deep. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how to explain it. I have examples, but it would take me a while to find them. Should I find them? Should I put in that work? I feel like I should. Oh, I actually left on, as I was reading it, like on iBooks. I didn't do it for the main book. I only did it for the prequel one, which I kind of regret because there was so many times this happened in the main one that I like should have highlighted and should have like, called out when I saw. But I didn't, and it was only when I read the prequel that I was like, do you know what? I actually have to make a note of this because this is getting ridiculous. So there's one point where she goes, the love interest. So the prequel is about the like aunt and the aunt's relationship with, the guy she marries. And at one point there's a thing that goes, my bad? I crossed my arms over my chest. I should accept his help, but I didn't want to. Who says my bad? And it's things like that. It's like everyone Sorry, that's a bad word. Everyone says my bad. That is like a very common thing. And like they were doing this all the time. It would be like super common things to say. And then they'd all be sat there like, oh, nobody says that. Like, oh my gosh, your like vocabulary is so strange. Like, who even says that? Everybody says that. And it literally pissed me off so much. Like, it was really getting on my nerves. Well, it's me from the future. I'm currently editing this video and I was like, you know what? I actually need to relay this point further. And so I've gone onto the book and I literally just typed in slang and it came up. It was a buzzword. It was like, wow, yeah. Do you know what? We have a lot for you. And it just showed me the repeat offenses of this girl correcting this man on grammar that wasn't even that bad. Bearing in mind, the example that I gave in the video is from the prequel. This is from the main book, so it wasn't even like a fun little character quirk. No, this is just something that she's decided to put in all her writing. Like, the prequel is based on completely different characters in a completely different relationship, but it still remains a recurring theme. So I just thought I'd give some more examples to really nail the pin in the coffin, if you will, because I just think it's the funniest thing and it was literally grating on my nerves so badly. Also, I'm aware I'm not supposed to hold the mic like this. What are you gonna do? Sue me. So first off, we have, he's yapping about something. Do we even care? No, but he's like, it is a matter of evolution. The human being has evolved and needed more space, forcing us to move, and therefore we move back and forth to see each other. She goes, you sound like an old history teacher talking like this. I should teach you some slang. You'll probably need them here, unless you don't want to fit in. You might be thinking, okay, that's not that bad, you know. Okay, first offense. In the context, if you just took that and you isolated it and she never brought it up again, okay, like, I don't care. But, like, I just can't, like, when you consider it in the context of everything else, it's too much. It's too much. Like, let the man live. Let him speak the way he wants to speak. You know what I mean? So we then move on. Second offense, right? He goes, thank you, Sarah. I really appreciate it. She goes, no. Wow, I'm really gonna have to teach you some slang, aren't I? To begin with, you can say hat tip instead. What? What do you actually mean? She then goes, here, let me show you. Whenever you say it, you have to tip an imaginary hat. What in the quirky she's not like other girls is this? Actually get a grip. He's gone, oh, I really appreciate that, thank you. She's gone, no. Let me teach you some slang. We don't say that here. We actually don't say thank you to each other here. We're actually not grateful here. We just... Do you know what? Maybe we should all follow in her footsteps. Maybe we're all really strange and we just need to change up the way we go about life. And do you know what? Next time someone says something to me, you know, and they're like, hey, wow, you look really pretty today, I'm just gonna... Don't piss me off. Then we have the third offense that I will show you and then I'll lay it to rest, maybe. This one's the worst one in my opinion. He goes, and you gave it a kitty name. It's abnormal. She goes, abnormal is saying the word abnormal. Who even says that? Your new word today is going to be insane. No. Is this a hot take? I don't think so. I don't think abnormal is that crazy of a word. I don't think it's that strange of a word to use in a sentence. So what if he's a vocabulary king? Let him be the vocab king. Okay, who are you to crush his thunder? It bugged me so much, and I just needed to give more examples of that so you know that I'm not insane. Thank you. I will let it go now. Okay. There's a bit where... This is just a whole other thing. There's a bit where she goes, out loud. Turns out I am a teenager, and that's what we do. We roll our eyes, shrug, and slam doors in anger. What teenager is running around being like, yeah, I'm a teenager. I roll my eyes, I slam doors. Like, you can tell this is written by, like, a middle-aged woman who's just, like, perceiving the most stereotypical version of a teenager. I'll have you know, that's not the kind of teenager I was, you know? That's not what we all do. Don't speak for me. So that was one of the things that I highlighted, because it... And then there's a bit where, she goes in her internal monologue, it was not fair. And then in someone else's external, like, speaking, they go, life's not fair, sweetheart. Why are you acting like, what, as an author, like, why was she responding like she could read minds? You know what I mean? Like, here I am, and I'm just going,
life is just so unfair.
And they're like, oh, life's not fair. Like, I'd freak out. I'd be like, how did you know what I was thinking? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just things like that. It was just like the writing style. The writing was just not there for me. There was certain like it just wasn't. It wasn't even like the plot was necessarily bad. I mean, it wasn't great, but it wasn't necessarily bad. It was just like, why are you? Why? No, to be honest, that's all I have to say. It was just, but the language thing really got me. Like that genuinely bothered me so bad. We then have I read The Queen's Gambit. This was a good 4-star. I really enjoyed this one. I'm gonna give it. I'll put it like there, I guess. I was kind of worried. Like, I've seen the TV show and I loved it. Sorry, my chair is really squeaky. I've seen the TV show and I loved the TV show. It was like the first thing I ever saw Anya Taylor-Joy in, and she's like my favorite actress now. Like, I love her because she's so pretty. I just love to look at her, to be honest. And I really enjoyed the TV show. So I'd always kind of planned on reading the book, and I was worried that because it's kind of like a bit of a classic in a way, that it was going to be like difficult to read, or like kind of just dense, you know what I mean? But it actually wasn't really dense at all. Like, it was really easy to read. I didn't feel like I was able to just kind of get through it, and it felt accessible, you know? It was interesting to see, like, it was majoritively, the TV show I would say is very similar, like there's not too much that's different. So it was kind of nice because it was kind of just like revisiting something that I was familiar with, but there were certain things that the TV show definitely left out, that were like quite dark and just generally quite horrible. And the whole, I mean, I don't really want to give any spoilers, but there's certain decisions that the TV show made in terms of like her love interests that just like don't happen in the book, you know what I mean? But on the whole, it was very similar, and like it was like a really good TV show adaptation of the book, I would say. And yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. I kind of was able to get through it a lot more quickly than I thought I would. And yeah, I then read get ready, guys. I then read The Poppy War. Oh my goodness, this has become my favorite book, like my favorite book series of all time. They're all 5-star. Every book in that series was 5-star. It is genuinely like the best thing I've ever read. And I just have so many thoughts. It's essentially about, I can't even, what was it about? It's not that I don't know what it's about, it's just that like, there was so much that happened that it's kind of like, okay, bringing it back to basics. How do we talk about that? It starts off, she's kind of like almost like fostered into this family who treat her really badly, and they are like basically kind of abusive. And then there's this like test that you can take to allow you to go and study, like basically in university, but the universities kind of have like they're like combat based, and it's teaching you about like the logistics of combat and like strategy, as well as like, you know, actual physical combat and stuff, as like alongside like history and other things. And there's like one school in particular that's like really difficult to get into. I'm explaining this so badly. But she ends up she studies like really really hard, and then ends up getting into the school, and she goes to the school. So the first one kind of follows that, but then a lot of events happen, and there's a war. That's not a spoiler, guys. It's called the Poppy War. Like, you can piece that one out for yourself, you know? And like it kind of then just goes into the war and the politics of war, and there's like magical kind of influences to it, and it's just genuinely one of the most like immersive things I've ever read. Like, I think I was like 50 pages in, and I just knew straight away that this was gonna like change my life. There's something about the story that is just, it just sucks you in so well, and the world building is brilliantly done, the characters are brilliantly done, the way that like the magic works and everything is just so good, and it just sucks you right in. And like, I think starting the plot with having the school and everything, it makes it like, because they're all learning about the world, you're then kind of learning with them in a way, and it just works really well having it in that atmosphere and that setting before she then moves it to the other settings later on. But it is also like, it's so brilliant, but it's kind of, influenced by events that happened in real life, in real wars. And it is so brutal and it is so, so grim at points. Like, it's really, really hard to read at points because it goes quite into depth into the brutality of war. And even then, it barely covers the genuine brutality of wars that have actually happened in our world. You know what I mean? Like, you go into it and it's fiction, but it's not fiction because so much of it is based off of like real atrocities that happened. And like, she has to wash those atrocities down to be able to publish it in the book. And even in the book, when you're reading it, it is so, so bad. So just be warned. Like, I think it's incredible, and I think I like it for that, and I like it for the real and rawness of it. It's not like a fun series, but it's a very compelling, like, just incredibly well written series that just sucks you in, kind of for not for better. What's the term I'm trying to think of? I was gonna say like for better or worse, but I just mean for worse. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of the time. But it's still so, like, I don't regret reading it. You know what I mean? Like, it's so bad, but it feels like an important read. It's like the right mix of fantasy and the right mix of like history. And it's just so good. I don't think my words will ever be able to describe how incredible the Poppy War is and how much I love it. So I then read The Kiss of Deception. This one was one that I read on, or I listened to on Audible. This was a reread because I had read it in like 2022, round about the same kind of time of year. The only reason I reread it was because I then later read the Dance of Thieves duology, which they're like set in the same universe. And the Kiss of Deception, it's like called like the Remnant Chronicles. That's what the trilogy is called. Is set before the Dance of Thieves, and I really enjoyed the Remnant Chronicles when I first listened to them. And I remember, like, I rated them 5 stars, or I think I at least rated like the third one a 5 star. But I feel like re-listening to them, they're just kind of like a 4 star overall. It essentially follows a girl who, she's like a princess and she's being forced to marry this guy and she doesn't want to marry him, so she runs away and goes to this small town where with her maidservant, because it's where her maidservant grew up. And then she's basically being like hunted down by an assassin from a different kingdom who, you know, wants to kill her for political reasons. And then she's also being hunted down by the guy she was supposed to marry, because he was kind of like, what the F, you know? Like, why did you not want to marry me? And they both find her, like, at the same time. And you are reading things from these two guys' perspectives. And then you're reading things through the assassin and the prince's perspective. But you don't know which one's the assassin and which one's the prince. Because, like, when you actually have their, like, names. Like, obviously, when it says assassin and thingy and prince, you know, like, okay, well, this is the assassin, this is the one that wants to kill her, but you don't actually know which of the two guys it is, if that makes sense. And obviously, she doesn't know anything about either of them. She doesn't know that it's she just thinks, like, oh, there's these two guys. And so, you know, there's kind of a bit of a love triangle moment. Obviously, it's like a romantasy, you know, and, they both end up kind of falling for her. And again, like, while she's falling for them, you don't know which one she's falling for. You know, you don't know if she's actually falling for the prince or the assassin. And it just makes it really interesting. And then, like, her character arc, and, like, by the third book, she just becomes such a girl boss. And you're like, oh, she's such a slay, you know? And it's really well... I really enjoy it as a series. I think it's well worth the read. So I give that one like a 4 stars. I then read The Crucible. This one was on my reading list for uni, and we ended up doing like lessons on it and stuff at uni in our theories and histories class. I do acting, by the way. And yeah, I think it's a good play. It's not my favorite play out there, but I do prefer it to a lot of others that I've read. As you can kind of see, we have like 3 plays, this one as well, just all kind of sat in this 3rd star tier. That's generally where I put my plays, because I think there's a thing of I love plots and stories that are so well developed and fleshed out, and I think the thing with plays is that ultimately they are always gonna be short and not as fleshed out, and I think because of that I don't get attached that much, and I don't, it's like a different kind of media in a way, and a lot of the time it probably is just better to watch it. But I think there's something to be said for the themes in the story that's told in The Crucible. It deals with like witch trials in Salem. And so you've got the themes of like feminism and, women having power, but women only being able to have power as a result of them lying and like trickery and kind of like, their sexual prowess. And it's like, it just kind of explores the society in which there's just a lot of themes that I think are well, like, you have to merit them. So I then have Madame Bovary, or Madame Bovary. This is written by Gustave Flaubert, who is a Frenchman. It follows, I'm trying to remember now, it's a classic, and it follows a French woman who gets married but isn't satisfied in her marriage and ends up having affairs with kind of lots of other men. And yeah, that's kind of all I want to say. But it was really good. It was like accessible. It wasn't too dense. It was quite an easy read. It's not like the best classic I've ever written, but it just about scrapes like a 4-star ranking, I would say. I then read quite a lot of other plays. I read all 5 of Anton Chekhov's plays. I'm sure he has more than that, but I think these are like typically the 5 main ones. So we'll start with Ivanov. I don't remember much about these because I read them all back to back. They all just kind of blur together. But all I really remember is like my impression of them, like when I read them, less so than what they were kind of about. So I remember Ivanov was my favorite. That one was kind of about a 4-star read. It's kind of about a guy, and he's just like really serious and really depressed, and he's just not happy with life. And then I think there's like a girl, and he kind of ends up falling for the girl, but she challenges like his moral compass, and like that's just the whole thing. That's kind of all I remember. The Seagull, there was like a lot of characters in that. Some of them are like actors. There's like a girl, she's kind of depressed, and I think at one point she like compares herself to a dead seagull. I really don't remember that. That's such a bad explanation of what that play is about. But like, it was good. It was like a 3-star. It was fine. Uncle Vanya, I don't remember it. Uncle Vanya was like a 3-star. Okay, allow it, And then 3 Sisters was about 3 sisters. And a brother, and the brother's wife, and they all kind of like, I don't think they live together, but, they spend like enough time with each other, but there's like rivalries and stuff there. I don't really know. And then the Cherry Orchard, I don't remember anything about like at all. I think there's like a thing they're trying to sell a house. It was about a 2-star. And let's just move on from that, because genuinely when I tell you that none of what happened in any of those like stick out to me, like I remember they were good, and I remember like generally enjoying them and being like, yeah, these are good, these are fine. But the actual plots I don't remember. I then read Yellow Face. This was very good. Obviously, R.F. Kuang kind of inherently has become like my favorite author just because of Poppy War alone. Like, it doesn't matter how much I get on or don't get on with her other books, she will always be up there for me. And But this one was interesting because I think I've heard a lot of people say that they wish she trusted her audience's intelligence more. And with this book, I kind of understand because the plot is essentially there's an Asian writer and she's incredibly famous, and then she has like a white friend, but they're not really friends. Like, really, but they went to the same uni and like they always kind of meet up every now and again and like catch up. But this white girl has like a lot of jealousy towards the Asian girl because of her success and stuff, because she's also trying to be a writer. And then the first time she ever ends up getting invited to the Asian girl's house, the Asian girl dies. Which isn't a spoiler, guys. And then the white girl takes the Asian girl's finished manuscript, which is about like it was the story that this girl had written was about like Asian history and Chinese history and stuff. And she takes that manuscript and she goes through and she like edits it, does all the research on the history of it and stuff, and then publishes it as her own and says how like, oh well, like we always shared ideas with each other, we were such good friends. And so she's plagiarizing, a person of color's work, and it's a story about people of color. And then there's also like a thing of like how she herself looks kind of racially ambiguous, and she changes her author name to sound racially ambiguous as well, as a way to kind of like sneak past like the general public's thing. But then obviously people kind of question it and it's a whole thing. And then kind of by the end of the book there's like a question of like her sanity, and you're like, how much can we even trust you in your narrative? But I really enjoyed it and it was really good. But by the end of it I was also kind of left going, what was the point of it? Like, what were you really trying to communicate? Like, yes, plagiarism is bad. Yes, there was so much like racial insensitivity, and that is obviously really bad. But also at the same time, because you're following this white girl's perspective, there's points where like you genuinely do feel bad for her, and you're able to acknowledge that she's a human with flaws and she's horrible and she's racist and she's plagiarized this girl's work. But you're also able to recognize that like she's struggling, she's not doing okay. And then it's like, but why are you humanizing that? Like, what are you really trying to achieve ultimately? So it was good, but like every person I've spoken to, like, because my dad was like, oh, like once you finish it, like let me know what you think, I really want to discuss it. And so my friend said the exact same thing. And when I sat down and like we talked about it, each conversation it was just like, yeah, it was good, but like why? Like, what were you really trying to achieve? And yeah, I've heard a lot of people be like, I wish she'd trusted her readers more to like get what she was putting down. And I do think that there is some merit to that, because it is like, it was really laying the themes on thick, and it's like, okay girl, like I got you in the first couple hundred pages, why are we still here? But it was still really good, and I think it's still worth the read. It literally was like the top book of the year last year or something, so like even just for that, yeah. I'm very aware that the lighting is quickly fading. This happened in the last video as well. I always sit down to film at like 3:30, knowing full well in half an hour the sun's going to be down and there's going to be no light. So I'm turning on the light, and then I'm going to hope that the lighting isn't then terrible. Is this okay? If it is terrible, then I apologize, but what can you do? So I then read The Tempest by William Shakespeare. It was okay. It's like, these people get stuck on an island and there's like a magic guy on the island already, and then stuff happens. And to be honest, it's really not, I didn't think it was anything massively special. I think sometimes, like, I know a lot of people love, like, The Tempest, but I think it's the kind of thing where, like, maybe I would just need to study it. I find that a lot with, like, classics. Like, I love Hamlet, and obviously you can see Hamlet's like right at the top up there. I think it's like incredible, but one of the reasons that I think that is mainly because I studied it and I was able to then like have a grasp of the themes and like the concepts and like what was actually happening. Whereas I read The Tempest, I finished it in like a day, while I was on the train back from Paris to home. And like, it went in, but it didn't massively go in. I didn't have the like modern translation up or anything. Like, I was fully just like, I'm just gonna hope that I pick up enough, you know? And I think if I studied it and came to understand the themes and stuff, I would enjoy it a lot more. But as it currently stands, it was like a 3-star, like it was fine. Ooh, I then read Project Hail Mary, which was very, very good. This one is, I'm gonna put in the fireplace category. It was just so kind of, like, this is gonna sound strange, but it was like heartwarming. If you haven't read it, then that's gonna sound bizarre, because the plot is essentially like he wakes up in a spaceship ages away, like years away from Earth, and he's out there to save Earth. But when he wakes up, like, he was originally sent out with 2 other people in the crew, and they have both died, and he wakes up and his memories are like gone, like majoritively, and they're like slowly coming back, but not quick enough, ideally, you know what I mean? So he's kind of just in the middle of space being like, why am I here, like what am I doing? And then he knows he has to like save Earth, and he just starts having to do that. But there's like a couple of like flashback scenes as well, so like as he's like remembering things, you get like the flashback scenes and everything. And there's just a character in this book that is just so lovely and so heartwarming and so sweet, and there's kind of like a found family thing, and it's just so like, I actually just loved it. There's bits though where it's like kind of really science and like maths heavy, like he'll be explaining things and it's not like he's explaining things and like oh yeah, and then I figured this out. It's like, no, he's talking you through it, and you're just sat there like, okay, I don't really understand. But like, if you really like science and maths and astronomy and stuff, then like that would probably be great for you. If not, like, you don't necessarily have to understand what's going on. Sometimes you just have to smile and nod, you know? But like, the characters in the book make this very well worth the read. I absolutely adored it. It was just so sweet. I then read Happy Place by Emily Henry. This was my first Emily Henry book and my only. I haven't read anything else by her, but I think I'd heard a lot of people just talking really positively about it, and a lot of people say it was their favourite, and I did really enjoy it. It was like a 4-star read. It's basically about, yeah, I'll put it above Queen's Gambit. It was basically about, was dating this guy for quite a while, and he was a part of her friend group. Like, there's a friend group of like the 6 of them, and like her boyfriend was like a part of it, right? And then her and her boyfriend break up, but they haven't told any one of their friends, and then they always go on holiday together every year, and this year's the last year they're going to be able to go on holiday to this place that they always go to, their happy place, if you will. Roll the credits. And so they're like, okay, we won't tell them, or like we'll get there and then we'll tell them or whatever. But then like when they get there, something comes up and they're like, oh no, we can't tell them anymore. So they have to like pretend that they're still dating, even though they're not, and they're not really on good terms. And it kind of follows that, but it's got some really good, like the friendship in it is written quite well. And it's quite like a fleshed out plot, and you're kind of reading it like, are they even gonna get back together? Like, are they gonna thingy? And I really like that, because I think one of my main gripes with the romance genre is that it's just kind of like, well, you know they're gonna get together, so what's the point? You know, but this book kind of has you questioning that. Yeah, it was just well written. Like, I really enjoyed the side characters. It was, but again, like, romance is not my favorite, so like it was okay, you know. I then read Dance of Thieves, coming back to that. I enjoyed that a lot. It's kind of like an enemies to lovers romantasy. I don't remember there being like too heavy of a plot, but it was good and I enjoyed it. I remember people like, I think I was a little bit let down, because I remember people on TikTok and like social media and stuff, when I first started hearing about it, being like, it's so good, I love it so much, it's one of the best things ever written, kind of thing. So I had like really high hopes for it, and then I was like, it was still really good and I enjoyed it, but it wasn't like a masterpiece by any means, you know. And so I was just kind of like, oh, okay, well, I don't really see what you guys were seeing. But, like, it was good and I enjoyed it. It's basically there's a girl. Yep. There's a girl. That's it. No, she's like not quite an assassin, but she's like an elite warrior, and she's sent to this place that wants to become a kingdom but isn't quite a kingdom but is like steadily growing in power, and she has to do something politically, but then her and the guy who runs that place that's not quite a kingdom get like kidnapped and then have to like make their way back together, and then after that political stuff happens, and as all of that happens they kind of like fall in love, and so you then have like the we can't really be together because we're like enemies, but at the same time we want to be together, and then there's all these different political things, and like it was pretty good. I then read The Silent Patient. This was the first book I read while I was at uni, so everything from henceforth is like September onwards. This was really good. I did not see the twist coming at the end. But it basically follows a girl who, or like a woman who killed her husband, and then after she killed her husband, she just hasn't spoke in years. Like it's been like, I think it's like over a decade or something, and she hasn't spoken once. And then this psychiatrist or like therapist or whatever comes in, and he's like, I'm gonna make her speak, like I'm really determined. So he starts like working where she's being kept, and then starts like trying to get to her, and then it explores stuff, but it's kind of like such a mystery because you're just kind of like, what actually happened? Did she kill the guy? Why isn't she speaking? And he's like phoning people in her life, like he's kind of playing detective a little bit with the people in her life as well, and trying to figure stuff out. So you're getting like all these different clues, and you're trying to be like, what's happening? And then at the end there was like such a twist, like my jaw literally dropped. I then read The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. This is kind of set in a dystopian world in which I'm trying to remember now. It doesn't, to be honest, the book didn't stand out to me massively. I know it's supposed to be like a modern classic and it's supposed to be so good, but it didn't massively stand out to me overall. But it does follow a girl who's like, her job is to sleep with people's like women's husbands in order to bear them children, because I think there's like a lack of fertility and stuff, and so all these women kind of get hired to sleep with their husbands, but there's kind of like a religious thing to it as well, like there's a proper like kind of ritual thing that has to be done to make it like sacred and respectful and stuff, and like even though they're like bringing life into the world, they're still kind of looked down on with such scorn, and they don't have like freedoms, like they can't really speak to each other at all, they're kind of always watched, they have to cover themselves from like head to toe in red, and it's just kind of like, it's just about like an really sexist, oppressive state, and it's like vaguely scary because it's the kind of thing where it's like, you could see this happening in real life. We're not that far away from it. And that was one of the reasons why I read it, because I hear a lot of people being like, do you know, the world's turning out a bit like The Handmaid's Tale right now. So I kind of read it for that, but it took me a really long time to read it. It was kind of dense, and to be honest, I don't remember much about it massively. Again, this is one of those ones where it's like, if I really took my time on it, and really dedicated like time and energy into understanding the themes and stuff, then I would probably get it and be like, yeah, this is great. But I didn't do that, so I have like 15 minutes. Do you think we can run through the next like 10 books in 15 minutes? Let's speed run this, okay? I then read Let's Split Up by Bill Wood. He is a guy on TikTok who I follow, and he'd kind of been hyping it up for quite a while. He kind of described it as like a YA Scooby-Doo style thriller mystery, and I was like, okay, that sounds sick. I don't think it should be labeled as YA. I didn't really enjoy it. Like, I love Bill and I love his content, but it felt a lot more like middle grade, like just the motivations behind why they were trying to discover this mystery and stuff was just like kind of non-existent. Like it was purely for like a lot of it was just kind of for the plot. You know what I mean? But like there wasn't genuine reasons. Like it was just like circumstantial. And it just wasn't that great. I just didn't feel like I was the right audience for it, you know? So I ended up rating this one 3 stars. I then read Our Wives Under the Sea. This is about a woman who is like a lesbian couple, they're married, and one of them's like a deep sea explorer, and she goes down in a submarine, and when she comes back up, she's completely different. And it's very like literary fiction horror in a way, and it's kind of like strange and gruesome, but the writing is so poetic, and you're kind of like I was just kind of blown away by the lyricalness of the writing, and the story's so like weird and creepy, but like in a good way, and I just loved it, and I rated it 5 stars. I really enjoyed this book, even though it's like hard to describe what it's about because it's just so like strange. um but I then like recommended it to a friend, and I gave my friend a copy, and she absolutely loved it as well. It's just one of those ones, like it's just so beautifully written in like a strange and creepy way. And then read How to Be Right in a World Gone Wrong. This was like the only nonfiction book I read this year or last year. It's like a guy, he's like a talk show host, and he would get people to call in, I think largely from the UK. Yeah, it's kind of set in the UK. And they would basically just talk about like the people who would call in. He would like, how do I explain this? He would encourage debates by being like, call in and ask me or say something that you don't like. A lot of the time it was to do like xenophobia, sexism, racism, homophobia, all of that stuff. And he'd be like, I'm gonna debate you on it. And so a lot of the book is like excerpts from real conversations, like verbatim what was the word I just used? Verbatim extracts, right? Something like that. I'm losing the plot. From like real life conversations that he had, and the way he debates these people is very clever. And a lot of what he's kind of saying is like, when you're in these scenarios, a lot of the time, the best thing to do is just let them talk themselves into a hole. And like, he wouldn't oppose their beliefs, and he wouldn't be like, well, that's racist and that's horrible. He'd just ask them questions, and he'd be like, so, you know, you heard that on the news. Would you say that happens in your community a lot? You know, or I mean, I can't even do it, but like it was really, I think it was really a good read, and I really liked the way that he kind of went about it, and it was just really interesting and intriguing. And then read Little Women, and to be honest, I rated it 4 stars, but I feel like I'm gonna give it about 3-ish. Is this controversial? But I preferred the movie so much more over the book. The book was so long, like I was listening to it on Audible on like 1.4 times speed, you know? And I was thinking like it's not going to take me that long. This book took me months. I started reading it in May, and I didn't finish it till like October. You know what I mean? Like, why was it so long? And it was just little snapshots of like each chapter was just like in a different event in their lives. And then like, I don't know, I think because I'd already seen the movie, I was like, well, this isn't that thrilling because I already know everything that kind of happens. And I just think this may be so controversial, but I just think the movie is so much more worth your time. I adore the movie. It's one of my favorite movies out there. And the book was just like, didn't feel as good. I don't know if that's controversial. I then read Everless by Sarah Holland. I then read the sequel to this as well. And honestly, I don't remember a thing. There's something to do with like, these people get drained of their blood, and then their blood like holds time, and then their time gets sent off to the rich people, and you can kind of like sell your blood as like timepieces, and then all these rich people are like kind of low-key immortal because they're just feasting on the blood of poor people and stuff. And but then her blood can't be harvested, and she ends up going to work for the rich people, and she actually grew up there. And then stuff happens, but a lot of it was just a blur. I was just listening to it on Audible because I didn't really have much else to listen to on Audible. And it was just a blur. I don't really remember anything. I then read for class Agamemnon. which is a Greek mythology play. And yeah, it's kind of like, it's so short. It's such a short play. It's like pages long. And it's very much just like one event after the other. Like, it explains the whole story. Maybe takes like an hour long. Like, if we're thinking like real time, I feel like the whole of the events of that thing take place in about an hour, and it's just like one key event after the other, and there's nothing to flesh it out, and there's nothing to broaden out the plot or anything. It's just like, this happens and this happens and this happens, and oh look, this happens, you know? And so it's like, okay, it expanded my knowledge of Greek mythology and not much else, you know? Was it actually interesting? No. I then read The Resistible Rise of Arturo Ui for class as well. This is a play by Bertolt Brecht, and it basically, it talks about the state that Germany was in as Hitler was coming to power, but it uses the analogy of like farmers and vegetable sellers the whole way through. So, like, each of the characters kind of represent a real life historical person, but there's like a comedic take on it because they're like vegetable sellers, you know? So it was actually kind of really interesting. It would be an interesting one. I mean, we kind of studied it, but it would be interesting to study it more. Because I think it was kind of clever, and like, Brecht's just really good at using like kind of dark comedy to talk about real historical events that realistically aren't that funny, but you know. I then read The Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare. Hot take, I don't like Cassandra Clare. When I was like 13, 14, you know, I read the Mortal Instruments, is that what it's called? Like the City of Bones, the City of Brass, that kind of thing. I read the first 3. What on earth was happening? Why was there low-key siblings to lovers? I don't care if that's a spoiler. I think we should talk about this. Sorry for not giving a warning, but like, just don't read them. I just feel like, I'm sorry, but they're not worth your time, because why are you telling me, like, okay, yeah, they're not siblings in the end, but they full-heartedly think and believe that they are siblings throughout the whole thing, and they're still attracted to each other, and they still want to make out with each other, and that's a massive thing in it. That's just effed up. That's so effed up to me. And so I kind of was like sworn off her, and I was like, I'm never going to read anything by her again. But look, my Audible account, there's not much on there for me right now. But this was on there for me, and I was like, okay, let me have a listen. And I'll admit, this is significantly better than that first trilogy. But I still just feel like I can't rate it. Like, realistically, it was kind of like a 4. Like, it was quite good, it was okay. But I just can't, I'm just looking at her with this lens of, I know what else you've done, you know? So, overall, it was like a 3-star. I'll put it there. I then read It by Stephen King. And I'm really annoyed and pissed off at this book. I'm going to put it at the bottom of the 2 stars. Because tell me why I read 1,000 pages of this book, and the whole time I was like, this is really good. I'm probably going to rate it 4 stars. I'm really invested. Like, again, I love things that are fleshed out. 1,000 pages, you know it's going to be fleshed out. So, you know, I was like, okay, all these different things are happening, and we're exploring all of this, and it's kind of creepy, and, you know, it was good. And then in about, you know, you've got 50, 60 pages left of the book. You've read 1,000 of the pages, and they get to the point where they kind of have this mental link with each other, and the mental link goes away, and they're like, but crap, we need to get it back so that we can escape from this situation that we're in. And to do that, the singular girl of the group, with 6 guys in it, they're all 12, some of them are 11. The girl is like, I know the way we can rescue ourselves from the situation, and it's if all of you sleep with me one by one, like have sex with me. So they have a 12-year-old girl sleep with 6 boys who are also about 12 or 11 in this novel, and that is the only way that they could have saved themselves from that situation. And it was just such a slap in the face. Because it's like, you've made me read 1,000 pages of this book. And yeah, it's a little dubious at points in terms of like race and gender. But overall, like, it's kind of passable, like, you're kind of, it's okay, it's all right, like, and you're getting through, and you're like, this is a good book, and then page 1,000, and you throw that in there, and I just think, what on earth makes you choose to do that as an author? Why on earth did Stephen King make that authorly choice? That is so problematic. And I was like, how did I not know about this before going into the book either? It makes me wish I'd really read the Goodreads reviews, you know, where they all talk about this. And it's like, also, like, there was a movie made, and I haven't seen the movie, but like, surely not, you know? And it's just like, what on earth? Like, and I have read other books by Stephen King, and I've rated other books by Stephen King like 5 stars, and now it's like, I don't trust the man. Like, now I feel like it's so morally wrong to read his work because of this. Do you know what I mean? Because why on earth were you like, yeah, these 12-year-old kids, let's have them all have sex with each other, all 6 of these boys with this one girl? It's genuinely disgusting. I don't even have the words to talk about it, to be honest. I then read Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. This was incredibly good. I think I haven't read Beautiful World, Where Are You? But I've read all of her other works, and this one is probably my favorite of what she's written. I know people struggle to get along with her writing because of the lack of quotation marks, but I kind of really enjoy it because I think it gives the book a very internal feel, and I think sometimes it's used really intentionally. Like, sometimes she will have the, like, you know, new paragraph indents to show where the text is supposed to be, and other times she has the text in the middle of paragraphs, and it kind of depends, and it changes depending on like the character's perspective as well on what happens, but it makes it so that you're questioning, oh, is this something that they're saying out loud or something that they're saying in their head? And I think that that's used deliberately in a lot of places, because so much of her work, and particularly this work, is about the relationships that these people, like these sibling relationships, the romantic relationships, the friendships that these people have in their lives, and it explores so much about what goes unsaid between them, and a lot of it is just like what someone is feeling versus what they're saying, and so to have the line blurred between that is actually just really clever, and I just really enjoyed this book. I was so compelled by the characters and the relationships that they had with each other, and I just like, I kind of want to go through it with a fine-tooth comb and really analyze the, like, all of what I was kind of just on about, because I just feel like it's so clever and it's so intentional, and I don't quite know if I'm really smart enough to grasp it, but like, do you kind of get what I'm putting down? Great. I then have Away with the Penguins by Hazel Pryor. I got this one from a charity shop, so I had like never heard of it beforehand. But it follows this old woman, and she's living up in Scotland. She like has no family that she knows of, and she just has this helper who comes in and like does her bidding every day. And she stumbles across this box of like a diary that she wrote when she was a teenager, and she reads it, and as an audience you don't know what's in it, but like, she kind of makes a decision, actually, I'm gonna see if I do have any family left. She finds out she has a grandson, and then she decides, do you know what, my grandson, like, she goes to meet him and she's really not impressed with him, and she doesn't like him at all, like, he's smoking weed and stuff, and she's like, no, this is unacceptable. I cannot leave my millions of pounds to you. So I'm going to go and find a different cause. And because she watches nature documentaries on the TV every night, there's a new one that comes up about the penguins, and she's like, you know what? I'm going to go to that little penguin sanctuary research place in Antarctica, right? That's the one where the penguins are, right? I hope so. And I'm gonna go and like see if maybe I should give them money. And like, she starts emailing them, she's like, I'm coming over, and they're like, no, like, maybe let's not do that, okay? We don't really have space to host you. This is like a research center, not a hotel, you know? And she's like, no, I've booked the tickets, I'm coming, you know? And then while she's there, she sends the diary to her grandson, and he reads it so that you then start kind of finding out about her life. And it was quite sweet. Like, there was massive kind of atmosphere changes because she like grew up in the war, so half of the book is kind of like war stories, and then the other half of the book is kind of like, here I am with the penguins, you know? And the juxtaposition of that was kind of trippy at points because I was like, oh, wow. But like, it was actually good, and I did really enjoy it. I might put it at the top of my 3-star rankings because you know what, it's kind of on the brink of a 4-star. Like, it was good fun, it was kind of sweet. There is like a series, like I think there's 3 books, but I don't think I'm gonna go and read the other 2. I think because it kind of had like a nice satisfying finish at the end anyway. And yeah, my final, oh, I think I've skipped one accidentally. I don't know when I read this or listened to it, or maybe it's not on my, oh, it is. Oh, I missed it. Oh, I skipped it. Oh, well, I listened to the Andrew Garfield kind of audible 1984 by George Orwell, and it was very good. It was like, oh, it was a dramatization rather than like a reading of the book. And so I should probably go and read the book anyway, because I feel like I probably missed out on a lot because it was a dramatization. But it was a very good dramatization. And again, like with the Handmaid's Tale thing, it's like, yeah, I can really see how this relates to the world we're living in currently. We're scarily getting to that kind of, you know, and it's not so great. It's kind of scary to listen to and be like, ooh, this sounds a little familiar. But overall it was just very good, and I enjoyed it a lot. And that is all of the books that I read in 2024. Should we have a little look? Here is the tier list. And I've successfully done this in the nick of time. I have 15 minutes before I need to leave. But yeah, so overall, we have the majority of my books are in 4 stars, but I actually had quite a lot of 3 stars, which I hadn't quite realized. But then a lot of those, half of those are plays. So in my brain, like, they kind of don't count. So overall, it was a very good reading year. Obviously, we have nothing in the logs are damp tier, which is always a great sign. And I've gotten a lot more generous at giving out 5 stars. Previously, I wouldn't really, but I've kind of gotten to a point where it's like, I need to stop being so picky, and I'm trying to be more generous. So, you know, this kind of whole thing, I'd say this is like a very generous of me. And I'm excited to see what 2025 brings. So far in 2025, I have read like 2 books, and I'm on my 3rd. So I'm like a little bit behind my goal already. Maybe I buy like 1 book, but you know what? It's okay. And I think this year is going to be really good, and I'm really excited to see what it brings. Thank you for staying here and watching. I'm sorry this was split up into 2 parts, but what can a girl do? And I hope you have a really great day. Bye-bye.